Ed, it's great to be here with you tonight. We know each other, we go way back. It's always a pleasure. But you know tonight's special for me because tonight I got to meet Deborah, the person who's behind Ed. Please stand up, Deborah. Ed's wife. So Ed, it's so great to see you recognized.
She's added the cool factor, she's told me, with my shoes. She gets credit for that and many, many other things, dear.
So let's start with perhaps the most obvious question, and that is, what are your core leadership values and have they evolved over the years?
Well, first of all, the entire evening is incredibly humbling and quite an honor to be here. So thank you all for joining us tonight. When we think about values, when I think about values, I think about that as it's the fabric that holds a company together. It's what a company's purpose is and what kind of leads through good times, leads through challenging times. And at Delta, we've had a lot of both over the years. Personally, the values that I very much subscribe, and I know our company does, is integrity, it's accountability, it's resilience, it's caring for our people, caring for our customers. And while it's an overused term today, I think more people talk about it than do it, true servant leadership, putting yourself at the bottom of the pyramid and making certain every day I'm doing something to make my people successful.
You've had to guide Delta through some incredibly challenging crises. Bankruptcy, 9/11, a hostile takeover attempt, and the pandemic, just to name a few. I'd like to focus on the most recent one that we all lived together, and that is the pandemic. I think your leadership of Delta through the pandemic, and we talked a lot during that period, was truly extraordinary. Can you share some of the high points of that journey from the first news of the outbreak in China through the very difficult changes that you needed to make to keep your company and its employees going?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic was the granddaddy of all of those crises that we've experienced. And for me, the initial reaction, emotion I had was one of disbelief. We'd been through a lot. We had gotten our company to the leadership level within our industry and the performance that we built 20 years to get there. And literally overnight, it was all gone. Mm-hmm. It was all gone. We saw our revenues go down to 5% in the space of 60 days from where we were. And we had 90,000 employees, we had families, we had communities, we had each other that we had to somehow get through that crazy time with no playbook, no advance warning, and by the way, not a lot of help from government or health officials. No one quite knew. You didn't quite know who you could trust at that period of time. So we set out in early to mid-March a game plan with our board. We talked about this. And I told our board, we're going to do three things. We're going to protect our people, including our customers. That's first and foremost. Protect them from this disease. We're going to protect our cash, because the cash was flying out the door. At Delta at that time, not only did we not have any revenues coming in, we had cash going out the other side because customers were calling for refunds. And we had $100 million net leave the company every single day for the first 90 days. Wow. 90 days, that's $10 billion for those that are counting in the space of 90 days. And we had to think about how we protect our franchise, our future, because we believed in that future going forward. And we started a path. We certainly got support at the White House. We went to Washington, spent a lot of time talking about the importance of keeping the travel community together. We got support for our people in that ways, in terms of payroll support to keep them engaged. I set out at the start of the pandemic with a crazy notion, and I talked to our people about this over video, that I had a vision that we wouldn't furlough a single person. Now, we've furloughed many thousands of people through all the other crises from 9/11 to bankruptcy to economic crises. I wanted to see if we could do this thing differently. And I told them I didn't know if it was possible, but my vision was together we were going to figure out how to do it. And Delta was one of only 2 airlines in the world that did not furlough a single person through the pandemic and saved the jobs of so many people. So, but we did it not out of a generous spirit, while we may have that. We did it because we went back to our people and said, any of you that can afford to, I'd like you to take unpaid leaves of absence for as long as you can. We had 50,000 Delta team members take up to 2 years off without pay. Wow. We kept their benefits in place, we gave them travel privileges, and they saved the jobs of the other 40,000, the younger people who couldn't afford to lose their jobs. And so when we say putting people first, we're a people-centric organization, these are some of the early steps we took. We blocked the middle seats on our airplanes. We blocked the middle seats throughout the entire course of the pandemic. A lot of airlines said they did it, then they eventually fell back and started, when revenues were coming back, they started selling. We didn't sell the seats. We didn't sell our seats in the middle until our customers told us that they were vaccinated at large and they were comfortable sitting back in the seats. And the reason we did it, and while all of you that travel on Delta, I know you appreciate it because people still stop me and thank me to this day for doing it. The reason I did it was because our employees didn't want to work in a crowded airplane any more than our customers wanted to sit there. I did that for our people. Right. And the customers were the beneficiary. And you know what happens? When you do a good thing, sometimes it's also seen as the smart thing. We wound up having more revenue on our planes than our competition did by selling all their seats, because people were willing to pay more to be on the airline that blocked the seats than those that weren't. And so you think about how that all comes together. Those are all now the building blocks of the new Delta as we're going forward, exiting the pandemic. And we can talk about a lot more of the COVID experiences, but those are some of the ways we put our values on display, real time, every day.
So before we leave COVID, I have to say, you might expect, coming from a healthcare company, I'm particularly impressed by your focus on the health and well-being of your people. How has that focus continued now that we're past the pandemic, and what sort of innovations or lasting changes are you putting in place?
Well, when the pandemic hit, for the first couple of months, we didn't have a chief medical officer, period. I was the chief medical officer as well as everything else. And the company really didn't want me to be the chief medical officer, and I understand why. Talk about operating without a license. So we had a good relationship with the Mayo Clinic and Dr. Frazier, who's the CEO. John Rako is a good friend. You know John Rako very well, I know. And I called John Rako in early May. I said, John Rako, we don't have a chief medical officer, so guess what? I'm now anointing you our chief medical officer. And he said, what? I didn't accept. I said, it doesn't matter. You are. and until you find me somebody that can be that, I'm gonna hold you accountable to that. And within a day, he gave me one of his best doctors to work with, Dr. Henry Ting, who I wound up a year later hiring. Not just was he working for Mayo, now he's full-time with Delta, and he's our chief medical officer. He's also our chief wellness officer. And what we've done in terms of transforming how we take care of the physical health of our people, he was a godsend, because he would tell our people everything about the virus that they needed to know. We turned our campus in Atlanta to be the largest vaccination site in the state of Georgia. We had over 150,000 people would come to our campus. Every morning, one of the coolest things I had during COVID, this is when people weren't coming to the office, I still was, I'd get in early and watch the lines, 8, 10 long, of traffic lanes coming in to get their vaccination in the morning. It would put a smile on my face to know that we could be a small part, and seeing the tears and seeing the joy that people felt they were getting saved from this awful scourge that we were all experiencing. But Henry didn't just, he's still with us. He moved quickly through COVID to one of emotional well-being. We know how much Our mental health crisis that we've seen in our country was exacerbated during the pandemic, and we've hired a team of mental health professionals that are on our staff to work with our own team to help their emotional well-being. We've worked with their financial well-being. We know that your mental health and your physical health is also a function of your financial health and your financial security. And if you're insecure, it leads to an awful lot of outcomes. We created a program where now any person at Delta, I was struck, during COVID, I read a fact that over half of Americans don't have $1,000 that they could go put their hands on in time of crisis. Over half. I didn't want one of those people to be the 100,000 at Delta. And we put a program in place that every single employee has $1,000 waiting for them as an emergency savings account. But you had to do something. You had to take a financial literacy training program online, which we provided. It's relatively short. And you had to sign up with a meeting with a financial counselor, which we arranged to have a 30-minute consultation. And once you did that, boom, you have an opportunity to have your savings account so you can kind of take yourself off that emergency payroll. And what we've seen since is that 95% of the people, we've had about a third of our people already take all the training, 95% of those people have started saving on average $75 a paycheck.
Wow.
And building financial security along the way, getting their credit scores cleaned up, and creating a better life. That's, if you can't bring your best self to work, you can't bring your best service to your customers.
So during your tenure as CEO, Delta has become the world's most awarded airline. It's been recognized for its operational excellence. Most recently, this year, again, the best airline from that perspective. You've also repeatedly ranked as the best place to work among your peers and as one of the nation's overall most influential companies. That top achievement across a wide spectrum of dimensions, operational, cultural, customer service, social impact, through difficult times. How do you juggle all of those priorities and make sure that the company performs so well across the board?
Well, it takes a team. And we have 100,000 of the very best aviation professionals in the world that work at Delta, that call Delta home. And we spend an awful lot of time in the recruitment process for the people that we hire. We know these are technically challenging roles, and of course we make certain the technical skills are there. But more importantly, we make certain every employee that we hire at Delta, to the best of our ability, has a heart of service. We know we can train you to be an even better airline professional. I don't think we can train a heart to care and a heart to serve and a heart to love. So we look at, including people I interview, we look at what you've done to demonstrate your service skills. And it doesn't have to be just through your job. It could be through your church. It could be through the organizations you belong to, certainly your past employers. And if you focus on the heart of service as a spirit of service, really, coupled with the technical capabilities, we think we hire some great talent within Delta, and then you put them with other great talent at Delta, and it winds up becoming a winning culture. Culture is something that, and we're also very competitive, so we recognize the awards are a lot of fun to win, but we really enjoy winning together, winning as a team, and winning inspires winning. Mm-hmm. And winning inspires continued goodness and continued service back to the company.
So you keep your team winning. We just heard that what was great about Coach Wooden was he didn't win once, he didn't win twice, he won year after year. So you've been able to do that.
Yeah.
Let me shift gears a little bit. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are also important values at Delta, and I know they're important values to you personally. You've been a vocal and active champion, and we're certainly proud to have you serve on the board of directors and advisory board for 110. But DEI initiatives in this country are now controversial. In fact, they're currently under fire in certain quarters and in some sectors. How do you deal with that? And what are your current thoughts about how we can best advance DEI goals both within Delta and also in the broader community?
Well, unfortunately, in the politicization of trying to bring everyone's standards up and bring everyone forward with you, it somehow has become a bit of a political, challenge. And so whether you call it diversity, equity, inclusion, or how I just prefer to call it, I just call it inclusion broadly, because I want to be seen as a company that includes everyone. I want all customers to love Delta. I want the Republicans, I want the Democrats, I want the hard right and the hard left all to love Delta. I don't want to have to take a stand. I want to find a place where we can all get together, because Delta is about connecting. We like to say at Delta, no one better connects the world. And as a result of that, we need to make certain we're reaching out to everyone. So it's under that framework, that umbrella, that we have inclusion as a part of our core value system. And we want to continue to give opportunity to those that haven't had opportunity. 110 is a wonderful, and I credit this man here, Ken Frazier, with the fact that he put his own vision out there in the early days of the pandemic following the George Floyd murder, and it kind of inspired me personally, and I know a bunch of us, to come in behind him, see what we can do to ensure that opportunity, economic opportunity, is going to come to those that have been marginalized, that feel like they've been left behind. We as business folk have more control of that than any organization, any government, any body that you would look at, because we hire. We have the resources, we have the will, we have the interest in winning in the marketplace. And I'm convinced that if you have a platform of winning together, people will come with you. And I want our management team, I want the people of Delta to represent and reflect the faces of the people I see sitting on my airplanes. I see people of all colors, of all backgrounds, of all races being part of our customer base. Why shouldn't they be part of our team and our leadership at all levels? And so that's how we continue to push forward in that space.
So it's all about talent optimization, both at Delta and all across our country. You've also spoken out, though, on a number of other societal issues, including sometimes when you face strong opposition. So tell us, why did you choose to speak up on these issues, and what lessons would you pass along to other leaders deciding whether or not they should voice positions of responsibility in the face of controversial issues?
Well, those are some of the toughest decisions that we faced in today's society. And I'd prefer not to speak, to be clear, on any political issue, or we've all been trained in the business world growing up that you don't want your face on the front page. You don't want your name to be in the headlines. We want all customers to love us. And we certainly don't want to be seen as trying to be political. But there are times, and we started this conversation talking about values, there are times when you see your values coming under attack, under assault, when your people feel like they're being targeted, when your customer base is asking for help, that you need to consider what our company's point of view is going to be. We live in very interesting times where the business community is seen as having the highest credibility of any group out there, higher than certainly our political leaders, higher than clergy, higher than the great educational leaders that we have in this country. Because I think people and employees look up to their leaders in their companies for direction. And if you come out and you're not, for something is relevant to your company and your culture, if you're not expressing a point of view on it, you ring shallow. How are you going to follow someone that is unwilling to stand behind you? Well, we'll support you in good times, but when tough times come, decides that they're going to hide, they're going to duck. And I've had a couple of those instances at Delta where I had to make some very difficult statements, very publicly. I was alone out there on both early on, wound up having a lot of national support come behind me, but someone needed to go first. Mm-hmm. And the one, with Georgia, voting rights, both you and Ken Chenault gave me an awful lot of good mentorship and counsel, and not only did we stand up for the right thing, for our representing the sacred right to vote for the African American community in the state of Georgia, but the nation came by my side too, and I appreciated that.
And very early on with the NRA, that wasn't an easy one either, was it?
That was a really tough one. That was in 2017, and that was, if those of you recall, Parkland High School in South Florida. There was a shooting at the high school, and unfortunately 15 or so young people got killed by a fellow student with a handgun, and the NRA had come out and had made a very caustic remark about crying mothers and weeping. It was just so absolutely insolent to the harm and the tragedy that we had all witnessed, that we were standing there, we were in shock. And then the next day, I started being emailed by the students of Parkland High School coming to me and saying, "Mr. Bastian, did you know that you're a supporter of the NRA?" And I said, "No, I've never shot a gun. I've never owned a gun. I don't have anything to do with the NRA. That's not my affiliation." They said, "But your company is." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And apparently in our sales organization, we had a very small discount for like 10% off tickets for NRA members to go to their annual conference, which that year was in Texas. And I said, and I didn't know about it, none of us were aware of this. I went on the NRA website, and sure enough, in plain sight, there's Delta Airlines. The name was like upside down, and it was just, the graphics were awful, and I just looked at it and said, how can this be? And so I immediately pulled that discount very publicly and said, we do not stand with the NRA. Fine to go out and make that statement, but then in the state of Georgia, the NRA is a massive political funding vehicle for elected officials. And within an hour of making that statement, I got a call from the governor at the time, not Governor Kemp, Governor Deal at the time, and said, "What did you just do?" And I said, I said, "We're not going to stand with NRA," and I pulled that discount. I can't have the kids of Parkland feel like we're taking, no, we're not supporting the NRA. And at the time, we were in the midst of getting a fairly significant fuel tax credit that was going to be, because we had very high fuel taxes in Georgia, they were going to repeal that law. And for Delta, it meant $40 million a year of tax savings that the legislature was just about ready to push the button and approve. And he said, "Well, how do you expect me to get the legislature now to go ahead and deliver that vote when you're opposing the NRA?" And by the way, the NRA, that little discount, I think we made like $10,000 on that. I mean, silly. I think there were like 5 people that went there. And so it's 10,000 on one side, 40 million on the other. And they thought that I would be swayed by that. And I said, "Governor, with all due respect, you can keep the tax credit. Our values are not for sale. We stand with the kids of Parkland." And I was a relatively new CEO. I'd only been CEO for about a year at that point. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to keep my job. In fact, my board chair, Frank Blake, who was very kind in the video, knew what I was doing. The rest of the board later said, you did what?" And the governor and the state legislature the next year actually gave us the tax credit back. And they recognized the fact that we were leading with honor, not trying to make an example and be a politician.
So there's a lot of future leaders out there tonight listening to you, and undoubtedly you're a real role model. But tell us a little bit about who were your role models? Who were your mentors?
Oh, I've had so many great mentors in my career, and I think back, and my top role model of all time is my mom. She, without a doubt, was my mom. And
Deborah's number 2.
Deborah's number 2, but Deborah will tell you that my mom is number 1. Unfortunately, my mom passed 4 years ago, so she's no longer with me. But she was the one who believed in me before I believed in myself. We all need those people in our life, people that believe what you're capable of, even if you don't necessarily see it in yourself. And I know for myself, I've got a responsibility to continue to pay back and pay it forward for those around me, with our younger people and the next generation that's emerging as leaders for our country. Frank Blake, the former CEO of Home Depot, he was the chairman of Delta, just retired last year. It's been an amazing role model for me. Ambassador Andrew Young. When I moved to Atlanta 25 years ago, Andy was one of the very first people to reach out to me. He was on our board at the time, and he said, let me teach you, I'm from New York originally, let me teach you about the South. Let me teach you about Atlanta. And I needed a lot of teaching. I needed a lot of learning. And Andy taught me well, as did Shirley Franklin, another former mayor of Atlanta. But I've been blessed. I've had great people. Jerry Grinstein, the former CEO of Delta for years. He was the one back in, I think it was like 2006, I was on vacation for a week. And I came back, and Jerry he was retiring in a few years, and they were asking him, who's going to replace you? And Jerry wasn't shy about giving his points of view publicly. And he apparently said that I would be a great choice to replace him. He had never told me that personally. I wound up coming back to the office, and everyone was upset with me because all the other people that wanted the job. They said, why are you in the paper? And I said, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I went to Jerry and said, what did you do? And he said, no one likes me now because you've said now I'm your favorite son. And he apologized, but said, yeah, you are. And eventually he said, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen. And that's the first I even thought about it. I had never even thought about taking on this role. And I think those are and I know your story a little bit, Ken. I think that the people that are not aspiring for these roles are the ones that generally wind up with them. Because the thing about these roles, and Ken is a perfect illustration of this, the skill that Coach Wooden had most, he was a powerful man. He was a powerful leader, but he was also very humble. He was humble, and he had heart of service, and he took care of his own. And if you can find the mix of not losing your humility while still being confident and strong as a leader, that mix is really powerful.
That's nice of you to say. My wife would say that I suffer from chronic high self-esteem.
So would Deborah about me.
Okay, we
agree with each other, though.
Right, exactly. We're running out of time. I'm getting the hook here. I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, what advice would you give to students today to help them become transformational leaders, to build both character and capability into their leadership style?
You know, I think one of the skills that we've lost sight of, and I know it's helped me, I know it's helped a lot of fellow leaders, corporate leaders across this country, is the skill in building relationships. You know, we are very much about transactions, it seems like. People want to do a deal, people want to get that promotion, people want to get something bought, sold. We forget that there's somebody on the other side of that cares about the outcome too. And I think one of the reasons I've been blessed to be in this job is I've had the ability, and maybe it's because I grew up in a very large family, I don't know, but being relatable, having people that I was interested in, I wanted to learn about them, I wanted to do business with them, and I wanted to know how I could help them succeed. And the more you put yourself in someone else's shoes, the more in which you take care of your people, the better job they're going to do to make certain that you succeed as well. That skill, that relational skill, has gotten lost. I mean, social media, virtual reality, everything about our world is becoming very transactional. That's why during the peak of COVID, when everyone said, oh, the airlines, the business travelers never coming back, the airlines are going to be a basket case, stay away because the Zooms and the video conference world, I didn't worry a bit because I knew those were transactional vehicles. They weren't relational. And as soon as people had a chance to be relational and to get reconnected, travel would take off. And this year, we're going to be 25% higher in revenue than we were pre-COVID for that reason. Because the world wants connectivity. And we are a means by making that happen. So I would tell all of our students, yeah, the technical skills are important, the ambition's important, but it's relational skills. And taking the time to learn who you are with matters as much as who you are about.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just had a master class from Ed Bastian. Please stay.